So, JK.
Yes, Edie.
When did you first know you wanted to be an actor?
I kind of didn't know that I wanted to be an actor until I found that I was. I was studying music in college and started out playing, my guitar in coffee houses, and then got into classical music and thought I was going to be either Leonard Bernstein or an opera singer, and segued into musical theater during college and loved that. And after school, I just moved out to the big city of Seattle and kind of waited to see what opportunities came along. And the acting opportunities came along more than the musical opportunities. And I went, wow, this is cool. This is fun. I guess this is what I'm going to do. And I was making $175 a week,
Can't beat that.
to do a Joe Orton play or a silly musical or this or that or the other thing, and waiting tables in between. And yeah, so I think the decision was kind of made for me. What about you?
Well, I have to say I had no idea that music was such a huge part of what your training was and what your interest was, and that you are a singer.
Yeah, it used to be. I mean,
you could probably still do it.
Yeah, it's one of those muscles.
I got you. I won't ask you to, but
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, my mom was an actress when I was growing up. She did community theater, and I used to go with her to her rehearsals and her performances, and it was, kind of magical that she had a real job during the day, and at night she and her friends went and did her little skits, And I guess they started throwing me in some of the plays, little parts, and I thought that's what I would do, because I loved it, and I just thought I'd do it like my mom, where you have a real job, and then at night you do your plays. And then when it came time to go to college, I wanted to study psychology. I just found that interesting. And anyway, I ended up getting into the theater department at SUNY Purchase, and the idea that this could be a profession was sort of beyond my comprehension. Like you mean the only thing that you could do? I don't know. I didn't think that was realistic.
Well, it's not.
So I was right. That's the problem. So I had I did the same thing. I lived in New York. I waitressed for a gazillion years and started doing little parts. And someplace I looked up and realized I'm actually supporting myself doing this thing. Right. Still can't quite believe it. Those nice deputies that brought you in, they're not your friends. Everything you tell them goes straight to the police. That includes other inmates. The jail is full of informants, snitches, rats, all trying to beat their cases by making yours, okay? So tell me a crazy audition story from the early days.
Yes, because we don't audition anymore.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Can you imagine?
Which is, oh my God, auditioning.
Nothing worse, I don't think.
It's awful.
Awful.
And one of the many, there were different sort of periods of auditioning for me. From standing, on the street on West 46th Street outside of the Equity Building for a cattle call in the snow.
I'm totally there with you.
Right.
5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And and then moving up the ladder a little bit, where you at least maybe have an appointment to be one of the cattle, and. There was a moment in my New York days, because after the Seattle thing, I did move to New York to do theater. Still hadn't occurred to me that I would do film and TV, but I had been auditioning for a lot of regional theater companies, doing musicals or straight plays. And when I was doing summer stock in Montana, I was kind of the leading man, singing the great parts in all the musicals. And then in Seattle, I had been more of a character actor. When I got to New York, I would go to these big auditions and see if I was auditioning to be a leading man. It was like everybody there was Robert Redford, and I wasn't. And at the character things, it was like they were all, Marty Feldman, and I wasn't that either.
Yeah,
I didn't know where I fit, and I found myself always going into the room trying to be something that I thought they wanted me to be. And I think it was a big helpful moment for me when I said, what if I just walk in the room and just be this schmuck and see if that's what they're looking for? Obviously play the character and, do the scene and everything, but just that was the first time that I was able to kind of just get out of my own way and come in and just relax, which is the magic word.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the most attractive thing you can do in an audition is relax and be yourself. I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
But
so they say. What's nightmare stories? There must be some.
Nightmare audition stories, all of them, really. I don't know if I've ever gotten anything from an audition, and that is the truth. And even in college, I wasn't an ingenue, and I wasn't completely a character person. It's a very similar situation that they didn't know what to do with me. So I was definitely cast more in the character side of things. I left college being able to play an 85-year-old woman, but in real life,
in a few decades.
And then I realized if they want an 85-year-old woman, they'll get a real one. That's how the way it works in this industry. So it was there was an adjustment period, let's say. But the auditioning, it never really went well. You have to sort of portray yourself with an air of confidence that I just never had. I just don't think I ever had it. So, I went into audition for a manager at one point. And it was a little teeny office, and he was behind a desk, and I went in, and he's doing stuff. He's like, all right, go ahead, start. I just went in to do a monologue. So I started my monologue. I'm talking to the pretend people in the room, and the phone rings. So he picks up the phone, and I stop he's like, no, go ahead. And he proceeds to have a conversation on the phone. It was awful. It was so awful. I still haven't worked through this one entirely, as you can tell. But anyway, I finished it, and then at the end, he's like, yeah, no, you looked like you were very into it. Great, thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.
And bye-bye. And that's what you have to put up with. I guess if you stick around as long as we have, you've built up a fair amount of internal callousing that you need.
Yeah, sure. Well, I remember the first audition actually I walked into the room, with an appointment to audition. It was a production of Man and Superman in Chicago, and the director was a well-known regional theater director, and by this time I had worked at a fair amount of regional theaters all over the place, and it was the first time I walked into an audition, and the guy had seen my work. And knew, oh, hi, J.K., I saw you in whatever. And he spent 2 or 3 minutes chatting me up and talking about my wonderful work that he'd seen and really making me feel wonderful and relaxed. And then said, okay, well, let's, if you don't mind, humor me with,
for sure.
do the thing from the monologue from the play. And I did my monologue from the play, which I thought I was quite brilliant at. And there was that kind of dead pause, and he went, okay, thanks for coming in. And I did not get the job.
Oh, God. It's just completely had the visceral experience you described, which I didn't need. Oh, yeah, never good. And I'm at the point now where I feel like, I probably shouldn't say this in any venue where anyone else might see it, but if you aren't absolutely sure that I'm the person you want, then I'm probably not. Because I'm not going to try to convince you that I am, because those days of trying to do that did a great deal of internal damage.
Yeah, sure.
And I also don't think I convinced anybody. They had some other idea of what this woman should be, and this all works out fine for me, because
Well, yeah, of course, but when the iconic things come along, when you find yourself doing Oz or Sopranos or Nurse Jackie or something, you just, in the moment, you're just living it and digging it, and then you look back on it and you go, wow, that was kind of miraculous.
A true blessing.
Yeah.
That someone saw something else you did and said, that's the guy I want. I totally know he can do this. And it's like you're kind of float onto the set, because you know that you're trusted. You know that the person who hired you feels good about the choice they made. And there's no better petri dish for creativity.
Yeah.
But to walk into a place knowing that you have what it takes, and they know that.
Right, you've already clicked with them. And
that's right.
You're a collaborator.
And the idea of proving yourself is gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a truly luxurious position to be in, and I think one that probably a lot of actors don't get to ever.
No,
so,
yeah, it's
grateful beyond words for for that.
As am I.
You willingly let her deceive you. I know. You go tiptoeing along. No wonder life hits you like a wrecking ball. God damn it! I said I know! No!
So what interested you in the role in Counterpart? What scared you?
Well, that's interesting, because I was first interested just reading the script, and then on about page 20, I started getting scared.
Had you agreed to it already at that point?
No. They wanted me to attach so that they could then pitch it. Didn't even have a network at that point. And as is my want, as has become my want, my agent sends me the script and I don't look at the breakdown. I don't look at anything. I don't want to know a synopsis.
Right,
I don't want to know any, So I just read the script, and around the first 20 pages is just about this guy, Howard, who's kind of a sad sack and a lowly cog in this weird sort of Fritz Lang monolithic government bureaucracy. And I'm really drawn to Justin's writing and to the character. And I'm thinking, wow, this would be a really interesting guy to get to know. And then for people who have seen the show, the big reveal is, oh, by the way, there's a parallel universe and there are two versions of this guy. And when that moment happened on page 20, I had a visceral, physical reaction sitting in my chair, and I was completely blown away, which unfortunately is a moment that audiences didn't get to experience because you have to market the show.
There you go.
But I did something like that, and then read the rest of the script, and then immediately went back and read the whole script again from the other Howard's point of view, because I don't know. I mean, every time I read something, it's always from my character's point of view.
For sure.
So it was, it was double everything. It was double the challenge, double the fun, double the hours, double the sort of sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
But ultimately, a really exciting thing to be a part of. And the fact that there was kind of an assumption from a lot of people that I was drawn to it because, you get to play this kind of yin and yang.
Right.
To Jekyll and Hyde, whatever you want to call it. But that I was really drawn to it before that.
Now, do you shoot all of one guy and then all of the other guy, or are you bouncing back and forth as you're shooting?
There was a lot of, in the first season, we're shooting the second season now. In the first season, there was a lot of bouncing back and forth episodically as well so I'm shooting not only both guys on the same day, but, episode 1 and then episode 8 and then episode 4. And it was kind of like shooting a 10-hour feature, in a way, which is good news, bad news.
Right. Complicated at best.
But complicated for sure. Yeah. But really a great process and a final result that we're all proud of. And yours now, you're doing something that I have very limited experience with, and I think you do too, playing a real person, and particularly a person who most people over the age of, I don't want to say,
25.
Have a memory of and an impression of. So there's a challenge. So
indeed. That was a nerve-wracking part of taking on the Menendez job, that I knew this was a story people knew, and I knew people knew who this woman was, although I didn't quite as much. And I certainly lived through the trial, and it was only a peripheral piece of knowledge I had. Certainly we didn't have the news feed that we have now. So you couldn't find, moment-to-moment information about what was happening. Regardless, I had, this vague idea of the story and who this woman was. But playing a real person it's a whole other challenge. Like, how much work are you going to put into actually sounding like and looking like, mannerisms-wise, of this other person, and how much is just about who she was in the scheme of this story, So that was a relatively new situation to have to deal with. But the story itself was interesting enough to keep me wanting to show up for it and be a part of telling the story.
Yeah. But daunting.
Truly daunting. Truly daunting. And Leslie Abramson was not a part of this production. The woman that I played, actually nobody was. None of the people from the actual story participated in this.
So you never met her, spoke to her?
They approached her. She was gave us the big heave-ho. I think this was a big deal in her life. This is all, hearsay. That I think it was kind of a big deal in her life that she was not all that interested in revisiting.
Yeah.
So no, she wasn't a part of it, which actually took the onus off me a little bit. Like, she wasn't going to be standing. I had these images of her being like, "I've never did that with my hand," or whatever.
Right, yeah.
So I was allowed to, based on her words, her testimonies and all that stuff, to have a fair amount of it be my imagination. So based on what limited footage I had with her, and a lot of the courtroom stuff was taken directly from her words. So so I was allowed to kind of make part of it up. I want to tell you a story from my life. When I was a child, my mother hit me with a wooden coat hanger. I was so mad, I hit her back. It was the scariest thing I have ever done in my life.
I have my own answer to this question. Let's see if it agrees with the actual answer. What was it that, what's the role that changed everything for you?
I could answer it from an internal place or an external place. Which would you like? No.
I would like both.
Well, I think from an external place doing Sopranos, just because so many people saw it.
Yeah.
And it was the first part. It was the first show I did where I was in it a lot, and it gained popularity pretty quickly. So a lot of people saw it. That it changes who you are in this industry. People start to recognize you, which starts to have a leverage of its own when it comes to getting further work and stuff like that. And I mean, the lucky part is that it happened to have been something I was very proud of. Those things you can't always count on those two things being hand in hand. So I was very grateful for that.
Yeah.
It was also 10 years from 35 to, well, I'm not quite 45 yet. But there was a big chunk of my life that I aged in front of people who were watching this show. So it's an interesting life choice we've made here. But it's probably Sopranos, I'm thinking. How about you?
Well, internally, same one? Or?
I would say internally, no. I did a play called Sideman many years ago. Oh, I did it for like 4 years. Started as a reading in a basement, and we ended up doing it 4 years later. We did it in London for a long time. It was on Broadway for a very long time. And when we all started out, none of us had 50 cents. None of us had any kind of career to speak of. And over the course of that time, more and more people saw that play, and we all went on to do other things and then came back to the play. And that play meant so much to my insides, who that woman was. It had a big reverberation for me. It reminded me a lot of my family and stuff. So anyway, it was a huge creative experience for me.
It was beautiful, and I'm not sure which incarnation of it I was able to see, but I mean, it's one of those moments that I still get goosebumps.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much.
I know we're TV and movie actors now, but to me, it's one of those things that you can only experience in theater.
I'm sure you've had them. There really is nothing quite like that, the live performance thing. So anyway, yeah, those were my answers. How about you?
There are a lot, I think, and maybe the most obvious one is the recent one, Whiplash, which changed the sort of perception, I guess, of me more than I felt it changed anything, because I'm 60 years old when that's happening. So it's like, and I was very grateful that kind of, attention hadn't come to me when I was 20-something, because God knows I would have done a James Dean or something,
Right.
But that was huge. And again, like with The Sopranos, it was so exciting that it was happening with something that I was completely in love with, the project, that Damien Chazelle and Miles Teller, and that it was a film that I felt 100% proud of, But that was just the most recent one. I mean, there were so many. I mean, going back to, Oz, obviously was big for a lot of people at the time.
Right.
And God bless Tom Fontana.
Oh, Tom Fontana. Nobody like him.
And that sort of put me on the map as a guy who'd been toiling away doing theater for 20 years and loving it.
Right.
But now, I could maybe pay the mortgage, and that made me, somewhat visible to a television. Well, it's not television. It's not TV. It's HBO.
It's HBO. Oh my gosh. Woo.
But yeah, that was also a big one.
Yeah, that was also the first time I didn't have to do another job was when I was working on Oz.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a milestone. That's nothing. That's no small potatoes.
Yeah.
Look at you, Howard. Believe me, I'm looking. Not long ago, I sent you over there like a doe in the woods. Now you're a spy hunter, bringing me actionable intelligence. What's your point?
What role do you get recognized for most frequently?
Well, Oz is one still, 20 years later, and
So
especially
sorry.
when I'm in New York. Well, and at first it was, I mean, my wife was terrified that I was just going to get my butt kicked on the one train every day, you know, playing, you know, the head of the Aryan Brotherhood, and going home. And usually, you know, I was like, let's save time. I'm not going to take off the swastika tattoo.
Oh, are you out of your
because then I got to
mind?
put it back on.
No,
again
right,
tomorrow,
right.
You know, I mean, I put on a shirt usually, but I think depending on where I am, it varies. You know, there's Oz, there's Law and Order, which is obviously, you know, an iconic show
For
that I was
sure.
sort of marginally involved in, and you know, the comic book fans who, you know, still go nuts about the Spider-Man movies, which were super fun. And
I bet.
and lately, you know, now it's been Whiplash, and for the past year, it's playing two guys in Counterpart.
That's a big
but you
deal.
know, I also, and I'm sure it's the same with you. You know, somebody will stop me somewhere on the street, and say, "Hey, I saw you in," you know, and they'll talk about some off Broadway play I did in 1986 that changed their life. You know, and it's like such a beautiful
What
thing.
an
to
honor.
hear.
I mean, there really is no other
Yeah.
reason to do this, I think.
Yeah.
To get one person that can say
Well, and the paycheck.
And well, I mean, there's that. Yeah. I mean, if you're not waitressing, still, that's helpful.
No, because I remember. I mean, when we met, that was kind of the end of the not having to wait tables, really, for both of us in
right.
between gigs. It was
Right.
like, wow,
This can
I haven't
actually
waited
carry
tables
me.
in
That's
like a year.
huge. But I was always had my eyes out at the help wanted signs. I don't think that still doesn't go away. I walk past a restaurant, I'm like, it's a pretty busy lunch crowd. I can keep my eye on this place. I don't know. It's just so you know, cellular for an actor in New York.
When you're walking down the street and you're in a hurry and you're on your way somewhere and you don't want to be bothered, and you get stopped by somebody who's a big fan of yours, what do they usually recognize?
I think it's between Sopranos and Nurse Jackie. It was Sopranos forever, and it's still, you know, after all the dust settled and Jackie is over, I still get more Sopranos. But for a while it was about half and half, you know. And what I get a lot is, even to this day, I'll be walking down the street and someone will come up and say, "What the hell was that?" And I know exactly what they're talking about, the last episode of Sopranos. And at this point, I have my answer, you know. It's about half and half. Although I was in LA and someone said, "Oh my God, the Menendez brothers!" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It was, but network television is a whole other ballgame.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. No,
I
it's out there.
hadn't realized that. People say it. You're in their living room a lot. It's very intimate.
So here we are in the age where so many things are being rebooted, revived. Is there anything you would want to revive, reboot, do again?
Gosh, that's a hard one. I think when I walk away, I'm really done. You know, people talk about Sopranos either coming back, or there's going to be the movie, the prequel movie, which none of the original cast will be a part of, as far as I know. I mean, if it was to happen, it would have to happen in a completely new way. Like, who is this person now, or who's this new group of people they're with? Other than that, I don't know. I never really get all that excited about doing the same thing again. I mean, I could be convinced of something if it was really interesting, but for the most part, there's so much to explore. And there's so many new ideas and people growing now that are writing stories that have never been written before. I don't know. I'd rather move forward.
No, yeah, and that's the beauty of, to me too, what we are fortunate to be able to do for a living is you know, it's the variety. There's always something new. And
Right.
As much as I've loved a lot of the things that I've done, and some of which people, you know, some of which have a lot of visibility and many of which don't at all, I can't think of anything I'd want to go back and revisit either. I just want to, like a shark,
I'm with
keep
you.
moving forward.
I'm with you, and it's lovely also to be getting older as that's happening. And the stories I am telling are that of a different generation now, and you know, there's never a dearth of stories to be told about people as they move through their life.
So just to clarify, a woman in Hollywood, as we literally are right now, just said it's lovely to be getting older.
What
That's a
choice
beautiful
do
thing.
I have?
Right?
The alternative's pretty grim. No, I'm loving it. I totally love it.